Hello, everyone. I am Gretchen Berry, Chief Marketing Officer at Buddy INS, and with me again today is my partner here in the marketing team, Joe Filipenko. He's our marketing consultant, and Joe has been working with AI for longer than most of us, so he's familiar with AI strengths and its current limitations, and I say current limitations because it's changing every day. So there's a lot going on and a lot of updates, but this is actually part two of our AI discussion. If you didn't catch part one, you can find it on our YouTube channel, and I'll put the link in the chat in a second. It's called Getting Started with Claude Cowork. And in that section, Joe walked us through how to set up a Claude Cowork account and all of the things that you need to do. So I encourage you, if you want to go back and watch that one. So, like I said, I'll put the link in the chat. And of course, if you have questions, put them in the chat or just jump in and ask Joe. So, Joe, let's get this party started.
All right, sounds good. So, yeah, as Gretchen mentioned, a few weeks ago, we talked about getting set up with AI. Things like creating your voice principles, setting up a safe folder to work inside of, so it doesn't have access to everything on your computer. Using, we primarily focused on Claude Cowork, but also all that stuff is also available and you can use inside of like ChatGPT, Gemini. Any of the other, those are the primary big ones. But yeah, that's kind of what we worked on there. Um, so when I was kind of brainstorming some ideas for this next session, I had tons of ideas. As with AI, it's changing all the time, and there's so many things like, oh, we could talk about this, we could do this. Um, but I kind of paused and I was like, when learning something new, it can be really overwhelming, or we don't understand, especially with AI, it's moving so fast and the concepts are changing constantly. And so it kind of reminded me of like back in the day, long, long time ago. My second job that I ever had was I worked at Red Robin as the cook. And I really respect everybody in that industry. I won't be going back to that anytime soon. But during the training, they had this thing called two steps forward, one step back. And so as there, you look at a menu, there's gazillion. I'm like, am I going to memorize all these things that I need to cook? Like, there's no way. And so that was kind of a cool concept of just we move forward and then they'd always come back to help kind of like, what did you learn? And it helped to uncover what you might have missed and you need to touch forward. So today I want to take that step back and kind of review what we built on in the first session, and how we're using it. Um, so we set up like a AI operating system in the first one. And so if you haven't built it or maybe you got confused or stuck, this will be perfect because if you haven't got that far, we're still going to we're going to take a step back and look at all those pieces. So um, the goal is not just to use AI as a chatbot. The goal is to use AI as like a daily operating partner. So for you, so much of your day is not just sales. There's preparation, there's follow-up work, client education, moving cases forward, documentation, and keeping track of all the loose ends of throughout the process. So today we're going to walk through something that I kind of made up and called it a daily execution loop. So when you're working with the client, so as we work through all of the habits, I'm going to give you kind of like a framework of thinking, and the steps and some prompt language and ideas as we kind of go through. So kind of looking at what I came up with. So the loop kind of can look like this. So we start with like a morning brief. We're going to get prep for a meeting, post follow-up meeting recap, client follow-up, and then an end of day reset. So that's kind of completes the whole loop. So it's meant to be a simple rhythm that you can use throughout your day. Um, you don't have to use every single piece in this. This is just something again I can came up with. So maybe you're like, oh, I love that idea. That one maybe I'll skip, or maybe I'll add to it and kind of create it. But just getting the idea of how to start using it. So it should be looked at as the goal is to start building like repeatable habits so that AI becomes a part of how you work, and not just something that you just occasionally use to ask questions, but it becomes really like a partner in helping you get stuff done throughout the day. So kind of taking a look at diving deep into the morning brief. So it's good to start your day with clarity and know what do I got ahead of my schedule here. So we open up our inboxes in the morning and we go, ah, there's a problem. I need to start with that. I need to jump into this. And we can easily get sidetracked. And it's like, oh my gosh, I have a client meeting in like 10 minutes. I haven't even, who am I talking to again? So when we get that morning brief, it's kind of designed to help us pause and ask, what needs my attention right now in this moment or today, in general. And it's not the goal is to just have AI summarize everything that we got going on because that's too much information. But again, it should have the AI help us identify what requires action today. What do I need to prepare for? What do I need to follow up on? What needs a decision from me or a response? So again, just starting your day by not reacting and having a game plan for the day. So um, the morning brief, kind of how I look at it is like we want to review, we want to filter out the noise, we want to get organized, prioritize, and execute on that morning brief. So, again, if you followed along in our first session that we had, we built a daily brief together. If some of you have it up and running, that's awesome. I'd love to hear about it. If not, that's okay. Again, that's why we're taking this step back and reinforcing what we learned. So, first, we want to tell our AI what to look at for the day. So that can include, I want you to look at my calendar. I want you to look at the recent emails I have, open tasks, maybe notes from yesterday. Or if you did set up the desktop, the OS version, look in a folder. What do I have going on in there? Um, the big thing to remember here is the more sources and connections that you're giving it, the better your brief is going to be. So I'm going to just pause for a quick second. If you haven't connected, like your Gmail or your calendar, things like that, I'm going to just briefly show how you can do that really, really quick. And then we'll continue on with everything. So give me just a moment. I'll share my screen. I'll walk through all the major ones of how to get them quickly connected. We covered this in the first one in much more depth. So if I go too fast or just go watch the other one or the recording here for this. So if you use Gemini, it pretty much has it natively built in. Once you sign in, you pretty much just have to hit a toggle. So it's the easiest if you use Gemini. So if you come all the way down to the bottom on the left, you'll see the little gear icon. We're just going to click on that, and they call connected apps. And you just click on that, and it's literally just a toggle because you sign in with your Google single sign-on. And basically it's connecting everything, your Gmail, your calendar, your chat, your docs, your Drive. You have access to everything, which is great. So when we're going to talk about some prompts and things like that along the way. It now can pull and retrieve all of that data when you're asking it to give these briefs.
Joe, can I ask
Yeah.
you a question? Uh, so between like, are there differences and things like strengths that Gemini has over Claude, over Copilot, over ChatGPT? Do you think each one has its strength?
They do. And they're always, as you probably hear in the news, like, oh, this model is so much better, and it just came out a week, and then next week the next one tops the next one. Honestly, they're so close. So here's my personal take. It could be different. So with connecting things like Google and the ecospace, Google, it's just all integrated, very simple. Like you can see right here, like you'll be like, oh yeah, I see how Gemini is very easy to just hook up my whole Google suite in just one click.
Right.
The others are easy as well, but and it also, if you haven't had a chance, they have this new video generator that they released. I've made some really funny dog pictures or videos of my dogs talking, like if you hover over. Like it's incredible. Like you just take a picture.
Oh, you know what I'm going to be doing this weekend.
I have made so many and sent them to my kids. They're getting annoyed with me, but it is crazy. Just take a picture, click this little prompt that you want your dog to pick. You just say, have my dog say, it's barbecue season or something, whatever you want.
That's
Literally
funny.
in like minutes, it has this incredible video of your dog talking. And there's so many other things too. Like I would encourage you to go play with it. It is wild. And so I think one of the strengths that Google has is really like their video and image generator is really incredible. Um, going to ChatGPT, what its really big strength is just kind of it's really just a great generalist. It can do everything really well for the most part, and it's I think the one that kind of pioneered and started the big AI chat. So it's really probably the most used one. And then Claude is really good for. Um, what I like about it and why I used it primarily was for when it came to like helping me write things, it sounded the most human-like without sounding robotic and like, oh gosh, that sounds like AI. Like it sounded the most just natural. And then the more that you work with it, and learning your tone of voice, like in our first one, we talked about our voice principles, to where like it can just mimic and it's like that sounds, I would have no idea that I didn't write that. So that's one of the things I really liked about Claude. Plus, a lot of the like the co-work and why we use it as a team and why I use it every single day is it just builds a very safe environment to work and kind of allow these tools to run and work on your computer and do things. The other thing, Claude and Anthropic, which is the main thing, they're huge on security and they take it super serious. And so that's why I like they sometimes they'll be a little bit later to the game, but it's because they put such good guardrails for your safety first. And so that's one of the things that I really like them. But again, they each have their strength, and I'm a nerd and I love having a subscription to each, and I use each for different kind of tasks. So, but there's a quick rundown on them. Um, all right, jumping over to ChatGPT. So how you connect that? Theirs is called apps. So if you just click on there, they use a little different. They have a lot more than Google as far as things, external services you can connect to. So like just when you open up, basically apps just think of like, oh, I need to search for my Gmail. And so it's really easy. You'll just click on there. You'll open it up. It's going to tell you. Um, well, that one says start a chat. That's because I already have it connected, but it'll say basically connect. Let me go back and let's do calendar. So like let's say maybe you have Outlook, maybe you don't use Google Calendar. Well, you can still connect your Outlook right here. It's really simple, easy. So the same process, what is you're going to do is you're going to click on it and it'll have a little connect button and you're just going to say connect and it's going to say basically authorize, do you authorize this connection? And you can just say continue and it'll have you pick what account. So my buddy account. It's just going to say, hey, it's going to sign in. Are you okay with that? It's also going to ask, are you okay with us looking at your availability, view and editing events on your behalf? It's not going to, it's always going to ask for approval. You just select all, continue, and a moment, boom, there you are. Now, when I chat with ChatGPT and I say, what does my schedule look like? It can read and look at all your appointments, everything on your calendar right there. And the last one is Claude. So from that one there, you're going to come over to Customize. Click on that. And theirs is called Connectors. And so you click on the connectors, and you'll sometimes if you don't have anything connected or maybe new and you might have like one or none, you hit the little plus button. And so then the plus, and then it'll say, I want to browse connectors. Basically, that's tools that you want to connect it to. Now, Claude has a massive library of just so many things. So right here, we talked about connecting, your Outlook account. Well, you can just connect 365 and it has access to everything if you want to give it that. But there are so many tools. Here's Zoom. We're going to talk about that later on about meeting recaps and things like that. Here, you just connect your Zoom, and so your meeting transcripts and everything, it'll have access to if you give it that. So yeah, that was a quick version of getting those connectors set. Again, as we go through everything, the more context and giving it access just to view and read this is going to help as we start to move forward in these daily tasks and things like that. So, perfect. Let me stop sharing really quick.
Real quick,
Mhm.
who was it that asked this question? Robert asked, is the AI HIPAA compliant when you link them to your files? Claude, from what I understand, and Mark or Jason or Joe, you can pipe in here, is Claude Cowork itself is not HIPAA compliant. Claude, I think Enterprise is. and there's a Claude Health, I think, that is HIPAA compliant. So yeah, so you do want to be careful. You don't want to be running client, you know, sensitive client information through Claude. What Joe is showing you today is, basically how to manage your day. And hopefully, and that shouldn't include, running anything that's sensitive, that has sensitive client information
Um,
included in that.
yeah, I'll add one more thing. As you're downloading Claude Cowork to your desktop,
Mhm.
so it's not sharing that information, in the cloud or with external parties.
That is true. Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about it if you're just using it on your own computer, just like any other files you put on your own computer.
Yeah, so I'm kind of the same. And when we get to that part where we talk about like meeting transcripts and things like that, I am going to talk about kind of, again, it's kind of how what you feel comfortable with. But again, it's very easy to generalize all that of like I was talking with a 58-year-old male and this, removing names and making it so that that's not really a concern with that. But
Right.
we'll definitely talk about that more because that is definitely going to be one of the steps that we talk about in that. So, okay, so once you have everything connected, so a simple prompt of, once you have those things like, hey, review my calendar, review recent emails, what are my open tasks, any notes that I have from yesterday. So that's one piece of the step in the morning brief. Then we want to filter out what's important. So this is one of the most important parts, So if we do not tell AI what to focus on, it's just going to spit out a giant summary of just tons and tons of stuff. We're like, gosh, I didn't need to know I had, all these newsletter updates and all these other things. So we want to make sure that we're telling it to filter out what actually needs your attention. So, something simple is just, focus only on items that require action, preparation, follow-up from me, decision from me, or response, So looking through those emails, things like that. Then we want to organize that. So structure really matters. If you ask a vague question, you're going to get a vague answer back because it's not reading your mind and you're like, oh, why am I not getting good responses? Well, if I just said, read my email. Okay, what else do you want back with that? So making sure we give a little bit more. So we want to tell it exactly how you want that information organized because each of us wants it differently. That's why I'm kind of throwing out all these ideas, but you will have it customize it to what you want to know. So here's a couple ideas of like to elaborate on the brief would be, some categories would be like, what does today's schedule look like? What are my top three priorities for the day? Who's waiting on me? Maybe you got emails in your inbox and they asked a question or a partner or somebody that you just haven't responded to. So it's like, it's been sitting in my inbox since the weekend. I better jump to that. Flag and note, meetings that you need to get prepared for. If you're meeting with a client, follow-ups that may be at risk, like, hey, you had a meeting with this person 2 weeks ago and you haven't sent anything. Are there any possible conflicts in your schedule? Maybe any bottlenecks or, back-to-back meetings, and you're like, I need to make sure I get time for that. Or even just asking it like, my day is packed. Where do I have time to prep for the meeting or send stuff? Well, it can also suggest like, okay, at 3 p.m., 3 to 5 p.m., you have a window of time. So that's when you should probably hammer down and start getting those tasks done. Um, then we talk prioritize. So once AI gives you the brief, you don't have to just stop there. Ask it to help you identify what matters most out of all those pieces there. So it can help separate what's urgent and high value work. So asking it, based on this brief, identify the three highest value things I can complete today and tell me why those are. So having that back and forth dialogue. Um, and then we want to execute. So this is where the morning briefs that you're getting, whether you've already set it up and you're getting them daily, now you're turning them into action. So instead of just reading the summary, we can ask the AI to help plan it now. Now that I see my day, help me figure this out. So, you can prompt it by, turn this into a realistic, 60-minute, time block for me so that I can start getting prepped for this. So, um,
I can tell I don't want to show what my morning brief is because it has other people's names on it, but I can tell you I get so every morning it has It goes into Slack. It just automatically shows up in Slack. Um, you can have it delivered to your email too, whatever. But it shows my calendar, the meetings, important unread emails that I need to get on, what needs my attention, what's overdue, and of course, I never have anything that's overdue, so there's nothing there. And then who's wait? Let's see, what is in Slack that people are waiting for my response. So it's like it's super helpful for me. I don't know, just
Oh
like
yeah, I totally, Gretchen, same thing with me. I have it review all this stuff, review the Slack channels, review my emails, all the same things we're talking about, and then it sends myself a message in Slack and basically gives me my daily brief. And it's like it highlights like first thing is something critical. Is there anything critical that I might have overlooked? And then it breaks down to like into categories like here's your emails, that
right.
ones you need to follow up on, respond to. This person's waiting on you to ask this or any outstanding projects. I have a task list, so anything that maybe is approaching a deadline, has passed a deadline, or if I'm waiting for something, it goes through all our Slack channels. If somebody messaged me or added something in a channel, it'll notify me like, hey, so and so is waiting on a response from you. So I'm like, oh, thank goodness it flagged that. I can jump on that really quick.
Mhm.
So super, super helpful. And you can have it sent to you in a variety of ways. I know when we built the one in the first session, that was designed, it would actually just create a PDF for you of what your schedule looked like. But you can take it a step further to be like, great, send me an email. And it can do the same thing. So you get like in your inbox. So mine runs it every morning at 8 a.m. I have it set up automatically and it just starts running. We're not going to talk about how to automate things today, but that'll be a future session. Again, keeping it simple. You can have it go to Slack or any other communication tool that you use. So it's really great stuff. So now let's kind of tie everything together. So like, let's say you haven't built that morning brief that we talked through, and you just want to just prompt it. So here's kind of like just a suggestion um, of kind of how you could go about it. So the prompt would look something like review my calendar, recent emails, open tasks, and notes from yesterday. Focus only on items that require action, preparation, follow-up, a decision, or a response. Ignore low priority updates, newsletters, and anything that does not require my attention today. Organize the brief into, today's schedule. What are my top three priorities? Who's waiting on me? Meetings I need to prepare for, follow-up risks, possible conflicts or bottlenecks, and suggested time blocks, if you want to do that. Then identify the first three high value things I should complete today and put in a time block. So there's like a prompt that you could use to summarize everything we talked about in that creating the daily brief. So um, one thing to remember is sometimes your first one isn't perfect, and that's okay. It's you'll prompt by asking some more clarifying questions, or especially even for me, like I'm always kind of refining it. So it's like I don't like this output. How do I change it? And the nice thing is you just have a chat. Say I like this part. Don't include this, and it's going to have memory and not do that again. So um, it's not deciding, your day. It should be helping you to kind of see more clearly so that you can make better decisions throughout, the day, your week, and everything like that. Um, so once, AI helps you identify what meetings matter today, the next step is, how do we use AI to help prepare before we walk into, let's say, a conversation with a client, about a LTC prep. What does that look like? So long-term care conversations are different from other conversations. They're not just about products. They involve money, finances, health, family, independence, caregiving, the spouse, children. Sometimes they have personal experiences with care. So the goal of the meeting prep is not just to remember the appointment, the last minute scramble, like, oh yeah, I have a meeting. I'm gonna just jump on and wing it. Some of us do that, but I think they do go better when we are prepared for them. So um, uh, let's kind of talk about kind of the framework that I built for that. So how we can utilize AI to get client context, planning concerns they may have, education needs if they're going to need that, any questions they may have, any obstacles or objections that may come up during the conversation that we can prepare for. And then what do the next steps look like, after you've had that meeting? So, um, a suggestion is, starting with the context. So start by asking AI to summarize what you already know about the client. If you have an intake form on like your website, or if have any prior knowledge, there's a great piece. It could be include prior emails, like we talked about, the notes, tasks, anything that you have scheduled with them. The goal is just kind of to quickly refresh your memory because you guys are dealing with many, many people throughout the day and through the month and over time, or sometimes you have somebody that you talked to 6 months ago and now they've resurfaced. And so again, there's great of like, hey, pull up everything on Joe Smith, and boom, it's going to search the however far back you want it to go and pull all that context. So um, you know having, asking if you have it in there, to review the available notes, emails, tasks, prior conversations you've had with them, and just summarize all the important context that you should know before going into the planning conversation with them. Um, so planning concerns, a lot of people will have concerns about, when it comes to long-term care. And, some talking points that you can kind of prompt and the AI to help prepare you is, what prompted planning conversation with the client? Maybe they watched a parent or a loved one that needs care. Maybe they don't want to burden their children, or they want to protect their spouse, or they're worried about the costs of the care. Maybe their financial advisor told them, hey, you should take a look at this, or maybe you're partnered with them and there was a referral from one of them. So, taking that and, a prompt would be, based on the available information, identify the likely planning concern behind this meeting. What may be motivating the client to discuss long-term care planning. Um, for a lot, there's also the need for the education. So that piece, many clients need to know what it is in the first place before they make a decision. But one of the big things is sometimes we just give them too much information with how complex long-term care is and all the different types, and it's so much, and that can be just overwhelming. AI is there to help you identify the top two or three things that client needs help understanding right then, and then where to move from there. So ways that you can prepare, or just ideas is, what is long-term care? Simple. Medicare versus Medicaid versus long-term care insurance, the cost of care, home care versus facility care, why planning earlier matters, self-funding risks, traditional versus hybrid, things like that. So you can prompt the AI, identify two or three of the education points this client may need before we meet to make an informed decision, or how can I explain this in a very simple and client-friendly way? Sometimes we're so stuck in, talking our industry language and jargon that when we throw those terms out to our clients, it's kind of like, what do they mean by elimination period? What do they mean by some of these words that are very common to us, but to them, they're like, just, they don't understand. So that can help prepare and bring those things down to earth in simple, easy, explainable ways. Questions. So this is where AI can really help you be more consultative. So instead of jumping straight into the complexities of the product and traditional hybrid, it'll help you ask the clients better questions. You can have it generate questions around, their family care preferences, their finances, their health, the history, the decision-making timeline. Like, are you looking to do this, right now, 6 months from now? So a prompt that you can, drop in would be, create a list of thoughtful questions I should ask during this LTC, planning meeting with this client. Organize them by family, care preferences, their finances, their health, existing planning they may have done with other things, and decision-making timelines. So, have you ever had a personal experience, some example questions you can kind of feed or even ask is, have you ever had a personal experience with a parent, spouse, or loved one needing care? Who would be impacted if they needed care? Where would you prefer to receive care if your health changed? Are there any assets, income sources you prefer not to use for care? Maybe that's saved for something else. And then what would you need to feel comfortable taking the next step? Um, And then another part of preparation is obstacles. We know there's going to be some of these, so it can help you kind of prepare for that as well. What might get in the way? It doesn't mean like, getting ready for a pushy response but it just helps you prepare for concerns that are probably going to come out and how you can handle them easy. So things that we hear a lot is, it's too expensive. I'm just going to self-insure. My kids are going to take care of me, or, Medicare or Medicaid is going to take care of it. I don't need to worry, or I'm too young. I don't need it. My spouse will take care of me. We hear tons of them. So, we can ask, again, prompts with all the context, based on the client context, identify some objections. Maybe the notes you already have, they've already said, hey, cost is a concern. Well, it's already going to see that, or any decision barriers that come up for that. And then next steps, that's another thing is, a successful meeting doesn't always mean that they want to fill out an application right then and there. Sometimes the right next step is gathering health information. There's again so many parts of the process. They need to involve a spouse, finding the right product fits, schedule just a second conversation. They want to spend time, or education. Maybe they're still just kind of like, I don't really know or understand the need of it. Just the end of it is it's really important to understand that what's the next step. So, once you have that information in there, you can a prompt to be like, recommend the most appropriate next step I should aim for by the end of this planning meeting with the client. Give me, primary next step and one backup next, just in case the client's not ready. So, it's going to, give you some ideas and suggestions for that. So, how do we kind of tie all those steps together in one big long prompt? So it can kind of look like something like this would be, help me prepare for an upcoming long-term care planning meeting, review the available client notes, emails, tasks, and prior conversations, organize my prep brief into, I want client context, liking planning concerns or motivations, top education points that they may need, questions they could anticipate in asking me, so I'm prepared, likely objections, concerns, decision barriers, materials and information I should have ready and on hand before we meet. And then what's going to be the next step? So keep it practical, consultative, client friendly. Don't make it about product recommendations unless you've already discussed that. And just help me prepare to guide the conversation and not pressure the client. Um, so that's if you got a lot of time. Maybe if you are looking for something even quicker, I put together, I have an LTC planning meeting starting soon. Give me a quick prep brief, focus on what I need to know about the client, what questions they should ask, what concerns may come up, and what should I be ready to prepare and secure next. So, um, really the AI doesn't replace your expertise. I know we always sometimes get worried about that it's going to replace me, but that's really important to it's not going to replace you because you guys are true experts. It helps you retrieve just this context faster, organize your thoughts, and help you walk into this conversation with a plan and a strategy. You're still the specialist. It's just we're leveraging the AI tools to help us prepare for this conversation. So the next habit, the third one that I have, is going to be all about post meeting. So after we've had the meeting, we got so much more work to do. So the meeting's not complete until the notes, the follow-ups, the next steps are captured. This is where we tend to lose time or lose momentum. Is right after the meeting, we're just like, "Oh, I'll remember it up here. You had a great conversation, but you think, oh, I'm just going to remember all of that. But it's best to just pause. Let's take some action here, make some notes, because this is really the biggest opportunity. And the biggest productivity win we can have right now is by taking a few minutes to just follow up post a meeting. So the framework that I kind of have for that is we want to summarize what we talked about, extract, organize, draft, and assign and schedule these pieces. So by summarizing the meeting, so we were talking about that just a little bit ago. Start with rough notes. So if as you're talking, even if you don't have one of the like note takers, like I know Zoom will create transcripts. As we join this call, where our AI note takers jump in, like Fathom, Fireflies, Read AI, things like that. So you can use those if you want, if you're comfortable with that, or just bullet points that you jotted down. And then you're going to want to ask the AI to turn that into a clean summary. Keep it simple. This makes, the meeting easier to document when you start to follow up. So once you drop all those ideas, then a sample prompt, idea would be like summarize the planning meeting in a clear and organized way. Focus on what was discussed, what the client cares about, what concerns came up, and what the next steps that you guys agreed upon on that call. Um, Next part is going to be you want to extract the key planning details. So for the conversations, you want more than just a general summary. You want the details. So that's where we can ask the AI to extract some of those key details that they mentioned that were important to them in their planning. So some of the categories or ideas that you could have it focus on is what were the client goals, family concerns, their care preferences, financial concerns, health or underwriting notes, objections, missing information, like all those things when you're talking with them are important that we're, making sure that we note. So when we do follow up, we remember those pieces. So, um, extracting the key planning details from this meeting, organize them into client goals, family concerns, care preferences, financial concerns, health and underwriting notes, objections, and missing information. So asking the AI to extract those from your meeting notes is another really good piece. Internal notes. So this is where AI can again help us with CRM documentation, with how important our CRM is. Um, I know that sometimes we're resistant to it. Updating the CRM feels more tedious. We just think I'll just remember it. Um, or you got a piece of paper and you're writing, scratching down on post-it notes, and then you look at it and you're like, what was that for? So, AI can help us turn those messy meeting notes into, a clean internal note. So by having it, one of the prompts is that you could ask, once you put your notes in is, turn this into a professional internal note that I can add to my CRM, keep it factual, concise, and organized, include meeting purpose, key discussion points, client concerns, action items, and the next steps. Um, then one of the next pieces is drafting up a follow-up email. Um, this can be a huge time saver, especially if you followed in our last session where we created our voice principles. This is going to be even more effective. So um, in our first one, if you did miss that, what we did is we actually have a prompt. If you go back and look at that video, if you haven't done it, and what it does is when your email is connected, it actually goes through a lot of your emails. And what it does, it just finds out patterns. It finds out how you sign off, common words you use, everything, and just kind of writes like a prompt and tells the AI what your voice sounds like. So when I say write me a warm and professional email, it sounds like it's literally coming from you. So that's one great thing. If you don't, you can still get really great responses, but there'll be some things that you might have to go back and forth with it. So when it comes to following up, when now you've already talked about all the different action items, the next thing you can ask is drop a warm professional follow-up email to this client. Thank them for their time, summarize the key points discussed, confirm the next steps, list any information that you're going to need from them. Just clear, easy to understand. Um, and then sometimes, after a good meeting is we usually have task list after that. So um, some of that can be that you might have something you need from the client, someone from your team. Maybe you got to send something to another person on your team or a referral partner. This is again where AI can really help separate those tasks out. So looking at all the notes you put in there, the next thing is ask based on the meeting, create a task list, separate the tasks into tasks for me, tasks for the client, tasks for my team or referral partners as some ideas there. And then we talked about what are the next steps. So uh, following up later when you just try to remember is not a strategy. It's really got to be pretty soon after that. So every meeting that you have should have definitely next steps, next actions to keep it going forward. Um, if they're not ready, the next action might just be scheduling a future check-in or sending some educational dropping into a drip campaign for nurture and things like that. If some of you have that stuff set up, um, so again, asking what does it look like, based on the meeting, recommend the next best follow-up date. What follow-up date should I say? What tasks need to be added to my calendar or CRM? So what does this whole full post-meeting prompts kind of look like when we tie it all together? It'd be something like I just finished a planning meeting with the client using the notes or transcript below. Help me turn the conversation into execution items. Organize the output into a meeting summary, key client goals or concerns, important family, financial, health, care preference details, questions or objections that came up, any missing information, the recommended next steps that you agreed upon, internal CRM notes that can be just easy copy and paste, a task list for the client, for me, my team, referral partner, and draft a follow-up email to the client. Keep the tone professional, consultative, client friendly. Don't overstate anything that was not clearly discussed. Um, and kind of how we were talking about, privacy, compliance, HIPAA, things like that. So, be thoughtful about the client information that you do have. If you're not, you don't have to paste sensitive information and into tools that maybe you don't feel comfortable with, and that's okay. So, using just the general information, still use the framework, but you can, again, like I met with, a made up name and they're X, Y, and Z age, they don't have to put the specific details and things like that for that piece of it. So now that we've captured the meeting, the next habit is the follow-up process. So keeping that momentum going. Um, the meeting can go really well, but if the follow-up is delayed, unclear, it's too technical, too salesy, sometimes those it'll just kind of stall and fizzle out. So the follow-up email shouldn't just be like a recap. It should be part of the full client experience. It should help them feel heard, um, reduce confusion, and give them a clear next step as to what that looks like. So um, kind of the framework I have for the follow-up part process is acknowledge, recap, clarify, educate, and then next step. So start by acknowledging the conversation. Long-term care planning is personal. Clients may be taking or might be talking about family, aging, fear, current or past experiences with a loved one or money. Um, a warm opening is really important in drafting these emails. So, draft a warm opening is a prompt suggestion. Draft a warm opening and acknowledge the client's concerns. Thank them for their time to discuss their care planning. Recap. So recap what was discussed in plain English and keeping it simple. Focus on, what they said was, mattered most during this. This again helps the client feel heard. So, asking the AI to summarize the key points from the meeting in simple client-friendly language, focusing on what the client said that mattered most to them. Clarifying, be clear about what is needed from the client to avoid vague follow-ups like let me know what you think or give them a checklist. Examples of things that could be, confirming maybe their budget range, maybe medication lists that you need to check. Be sure to include your spouse on the next call. If you attach the education piece, hey, make sure you take a look at that. So some prompting language that we can use, identify what information or decisions are needed from the clients before we move forward. Turn it into a short and clear checklist or document for them that you give them in the email. Education, you can include a helpful education if you use some of our tools and resources from the buddy system and the marketing pieces, you can attach those. Um, if they were confused about, Medicare, you can explain that briefly. They're worried about costs, explain planning can be customized and there's so many different options. If they're overwhelmed, you can reassure them that the next step is simply just to narrow down some options, just to talk about it. So a way you can kind of prompt is, add a brief educational paragraph inside this follow-up email that supports the client's decision making without overwhelming them. And then we talked about next step, having, end with a clear action. What's going to be next? Don't leave the client wondering what happens next. The next step should be about scheduling another call, sending information, reviewing options, or gathering missing details. So, ending with the prompt, end the email with one clear next step or specific call to action. So putting it all together, Kind of one long prompt to be, use the meeting notes below, draft a client follow-up email. After my long-term care planning conversation, use this structure, warm, thank you, acknowledge a brief recap of what you discussed, the client's main goals or concerns, any information that you may need from the clients, any helpful, one helpful educational point, and then pointing towards a clear next step. So keep the tone, warm, professional, consultative, easy to understand. I think that's really key. Avoid sounding pushy or over sales focused, um, do not add details that were not discussed. Sometimes when we utilize AI tools to create some of these follow-ups, they sometimes want to add a little bit more. So if we're very specific and just say, don't add anything else, it does a really good job of sticking to that. So, some of the common follow-ups, objection, the client needs to talk to a spouse, so a prompt can be, draft a follow-up email for a client who's interested in long-term care planning, but wants to discuss with their spouse, keep the tone supportive, suggest including the spouse in the next conversation, and provide clear next step. The goal of this is to keep the spouse conversation from becoming like a dead end. We hear that all the time. I need to include my spouse. Their client's concerned about costs. So the prompt could be draft follow-up email for the client who's interested in planning, but concerned about premium cost. Acknowledge the concern, reinforce that planning can be customized. I mean, there's so many options, and suggest reviewing options that fit within their range that they were comfortable with. Um, you know, we it's not a thing to just dismiss the concern. It's easy, we want to acknowledge it and guide them through those cost concerns. Um, Client is confused by options. There's so many choices. So, drafting a follow-up email for a client who seemed overwhelmed by so many different long-term care planning options, let's keep it simple, reassure them the next step is to narrow down the choices based on their goals, their budget, their health. So, when the clients are overwhelmed, clarity is sometimes more helpful than even more information. That sometimes the client needs to provide more health information as we're doing some of those checks. So drafting a follow-up email requesting basic health and medication information needed to evaluate long-term care planning options. Keep it professional, clear, respectful. Privacy is a prompt we can use for that. Um, and then as that stuff is being clear and respectful to the health information and being sensitive to that. And sometimes we run into, the client's just not ready yet. So, let's, draft follow-up for a client who's not ready to move forward, keep the relationship warm, summarize why planning is worth revisiting, and suggest a specific follow-up time in the future. So not ready, does not mean never, so we all move at our own pace. So take advantage of AI to help create like a follow-up, add it to your CRM, keep the relationship warm, keep you top of mind for that. So um, we talked about sometimes if you haven't built your voice principles, and sometimes you're like, it still doesn't sound like me. So some ways, so like as you see these outputs come out, the first draft, if you're especially new to it, is not going to be perfect. A really important skill is how do you continue to refine it? So, a very simple thing can be, if it comes up with a response, you can be like, can you make this sound warmer and less sales focused? Or sometimes it'll, it's huge pages and you're like, whoa, let's shorten this. Let's keep it under, 175 to 200 words or keep it between that. Make this next step easier because it sounds complex. If it's starting to use industry jargon, remove the jargon, make it more client friendly, make it sound more like my voice. Through having it, if you'd set up the voice principles, that can be one of those that can go back and relook at all the emails and stuff that you've presented and make it sound more friendly.
Joe, we are getting we're actually technically a little bit over. So I wanted to make sure if anybody had questions, they can ask their questions, or if you have anything that you want to make sure to cover before we
Yeah, yeah.
end this.
I just have one
Session.
more. Sorry, I know I can sometimes too much, but yeah, I just have one more. I'm almost there. So that the last part that kind of comes full circle and kind of is what does the end of the day reset look like? The end of the day is where, a lot of our mental clutter just can stop. We're trying to remember, emails that we need to send, CRM notes we need to update, clients we need to follow up with. And how do we just kind of close that loop? So, briefly, we want to do, kind of break it into, reviewing, capturing the information. What do we need to carry forward? What needs to clean up, and what do we need to plan for tomorrow? So, asking AI to take a look back at the day, what meetings happened, what tasks were completed, what emails came in, what still needs your attention. We can start by capturing, identify anything that needs to be documented. This could be, a CRM note, a follow-up task, a reminder, things that need to get carried forward. Not everything gets done in a day. Sometimes things slip through the cracks or we have to push things off. But instead of just leaving them unfinished, floating around, we're going to basically point and assign it to do something. So we're going to move it forward. Um, Cleaning up, sometimes a short message at the end of the day can just keep the momentum going. So this can be a quick client message, a note to an advisor, or a confirmation that you received something. Um, and then planning for tomorrow. The final step is setting up tomorrow's, first priorities, things that, we initially pulled, what are my top priorities? This is where some of those things are going to flow into the next day. That way you're not trying to start tomorrow by trying to reconstruct what happened the day prior. Um, a quick way that, kind of tying it all in, how do we, end the day with the prompt, review my calendar, recent emails, completed tasks, meeting notes, open items for the day, help me complete an end of the day reset, organize this output into what did I complete today? Open loops or unfinished items, follow-ups, or items I promised that I should send, any CRM notes or tasks that need to be captured that maybe I haven't, what items need to move forward, items I need to reschedule, schedule later, delegate to somebody else, just totally drop. And then suggest, the first priority for tomorrow morning. Keep it practical, focused, and keep me moving through, cleanly throughout the day. Um, so yeah, that's pretty, bringing it all together. So, if we kind of recapping, so the loop. So starting with our morning brief. So we're starting the day with clarity. Then we're getting into meeting prep. So we walk into our client conversations prepared. Post-meeting recap, we turn conversations into notes, tasks, next steps. We follow up with the client, keeping that momentum going after the meeting. And the end of the day, we close the loop and prepare for the next day. Yeah, so trying to rush through the point of the session is
There's a lot. There's a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. It's not that
Some
AI does
Go ahead,
like
Jeff.
everything for you. The point is that AI can reduce the friction around the work that you already need to do.
Yeah,
If you can prepare faster, follow up more consistently, document more clearly, and keep cases, moving forward for you, that matters because the client conversations are complex, emotional, spread out over time. Sometimes they don't happen in just one sitting. They can take over months or years. And so again, it just doesn't replace your judgment. It helps support your execution.
yeah.
So I hope some of that was helpful. Yeah.
I let me jump in here. I am an AI. Oh, I don't know what you would call me. I don't want to say skeptic, but I'm sort of AI challenged. It's not that I don't see the value in it. I absolutely do. And as a matter of fact, I'm using it right at this very moment to segment a list for me so that I can better communicate to people based on what we believe their motivations are. So that's another way that you can use Claude. If you're whether you're client facing or you're managing other agents or brokers, you can use Claude, or you're prospecting. You can use Claude to sort of dive into those lists and help you focus on the most viable candidates, or help you segment the list so that your messaging um, is more clear and customized for that segment. So that's another way that we're using it. So yeah. So yeah, so take it from me. I'm not the easiest person to dive 1000% into AI, but I'm getting better. Right, Mark
Of
Glickman?
course, yeah. What
There
I tell
were
everyone is use it as your assistant. So you use it however
right,
you want to, just
right,
like if you had an assistant. That
right.
way, it's perfectly fits, your level and where you want to be. But I do think it's going to continue in this direction. So you can either fight it kicking and screaming, or you can try to figure out how it best fits you. And I think we'll figure out for Buddy, what's best a fit. And Joe, is doing a great job at leading the way there.
Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions? Jason, do you have anything? Any parting words of wisdom?
Speak to your AI assistant as somebody who just grew arms and legs, and you got to teach them how to do things.
And
I
be
think
nice. Be nice.
I think that's the best way.
Don't be yelling at your Claude, because
Yeah.
yeah, you'll get booted.
Real quick, we had an exercise when I was in elementary school. Somebody came in and actually taught us a little bit about how to give instructions. And she basically laid all the ingredients, like a loaf of bread, peanut butter in a jar, jelly in a jar, out on the table, and said, "Instruct me on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich." And somebody yelled out, uh, "Take out 2 pieces of bread." And she starts just grabbing at the plastic bag instead of explaining it as you need to hold the bag up, take off the twist tie, open the bag, and take out 2 pieces of bread. So just
That
think
is,
about
yeah,
the structure, the literal structure of the instructions you're giving. And I think the more thoughtful you are there, the better outcomes you're going to have the first time. That's my
yep,
tip.
that is exactly right. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. You'll be getting the recording, and hope you have a fantastic rest of the week.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.